Hello, I'm Melanie Fales, Executive Director of the Boise Art Museum. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this educational program examining themes within the exhibition The World Stage, Contemporary Art from the collections of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his Family Foundation. This exhibition, organized by the Nevada Museum of Art in Reno, opened at the Boise Art Museum on March 6, 2021. Its presentation at BAM was made possible thanks to the sponsorship of Bev and George Herod. This virtual talk is supported in part by a grant from the Idaho Humanities Council, a state-based program of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Following this video, please help BAM continue to present programs like this in the future by completing a short evaluation at boiseartmuseum.org/talks. While planned several years ago, the World Stage sets the stage for important, respectful dialogue related to today's world events. The artworks in this exhibition have particular relevance to the current conditions of our world, the major cultural shift in our nation prompted by the Black Lives Matter movement, and the roles of museums and collectors in society during times like this. This exhibition features 90 contemporary artworks by 37 renowned American artists. It showcases some of today's global influencers, including female artists and artists of color, alongside prominent names from the 20th century art canon. The exhibition title is borrowed from the name of a series of paintings by Kehinde Wiley, an artist best known for his presidential portrait of Barack Obama, which hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. The title points toward the influence that American contemporary artists exert globally. The World Stage presents the opportunity for BAM to expand cultural understanding and to explore important ideas related to human and civil rights through the experience of engaging with the artwork. In this virtual talk, we will hear from the curator of the exhibition, as well as two artists who in their lives and in their artwork have transcended boundaries. I'd like to start off by talking about the way the World Stage exhibition was developed. Our first guest is Joanne Northrup, Nevada Museum of Art Curatorial Director and Curator of Contemporary Art. She earned her MA in Art History and Museum Studies from the University of Southern California and her BA in Art History from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Prior to her time in Nevada, she has worked in various curatorial capacities at the Dussesset Museum in Santa Clara University, the San Jose Museum of Art, the Norton Simon Museum in Pasadena, the Musée de Grenoble in France, and the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Joanne. Tell us how you came to curate this exhibition. What was your inspiration, and how did you select the artists whose artwork would be showcased?
The World Stage came about in a very interesting way. In 2019, I needed to organize an exhibition for a very short 10-week exhibition slot at the museum, and I wanted to work with the collector Jordan Schnitzer. I made multiple visits to his headquarters during 2019 and selected artworks from the collection. Jordan makes his collection widely available to all curators. And what I decided to do is curate a very diverse exhibition. My inspiration was an article from 1951 in Time magazine, and it was titled The Irascibles. And it included a photograph of some of the leading artists of the time that were under the age of 35. And in that group, they were all white men with one woman. And I thought to myself, well, you know, that was the World Stage back in the mid-1950s. But what is the World Stage today? Who are those artists? So I selected 35 American artists from Jordan's collection and made a selection intending to not just consist of prints, because that's what Jordan primarily collects, but I wanted to enliven it with sculptures and paintings and installations. So that is how the exhibition came about. It opened at the Nevada Museum of Art in March of 2020. and closed 2 days later. And Jordan, through the goodness of his heart and with his eye on philanthropy, allowed us to keep that exhibition on view until February 2021. So it's been on view a lot longer than 10 weeks.
There are so many great examples in this exhibition of female artists who are breaking boundaries. Helen Frankenthaler is one of the most important artists of the 20th century. She developed a style known as color field painting. She poured and dripped her pigments onto unprimed canvas rather than painting with a brush. For Madame Butterfly, she used traditional Japanese printmaking techniques to print 102 colors onto sheets of handmade paper. Lee Bontico is best known for her groundbreaking work that features imagery inspired by machinery and outer space. In fact, she was one of the first female artists to gain critical success in the New York art world of the 20th century. Vanessa German creates power figure sculptures with repurposed materials to communicate about African American intention, survival, and resilience. Through her vibrant prints of cars on the Crow Indian Reservation in Montana, Wendy Redstar reminds us that Native American culture is very much alive. Lorna Simpson addresses slavery and gender as well as the ideals of beauty through her installation of lithographs of wigs printed on felt. Joanne, can you give us an example of another female artist in this exhibition transcending boundaries in one way or another?
What I would like to point to is the artist based in Oakland, California, Mildred Howard. Mildred created a series of prints based on sort of women, strong women who had to play the game to get ahead in life. And she centered her work on a bingo card and then put images of her friends and families who have in some way faced adversity and transcended through their strength and grace in ball gowns and put their faces on these prints. And I think what she was trying to point to is the fact that strong women, especially strong women of color, really have to play the game properly to get ahead. They have to show their softer side. And that is who she was honoring with this series of prints.
Thank you, Joanne. That leads me to introduce our next guest, artist, activist, and educator Mildred Howard. Mildred received her MFA from John F. Kennedy University in Orinda, California. She is known for her sculptural installations and mixed media assemblage work. In 2015, she received the Lee Krasner Award in recognition of a lifetime of artistic achievement. She has also been the recipient of the Nancy Graves Grant for Visual Artists, the Joan Mitchell Foundation Award, a fellowship from the California Arts Council, the Adeline Kent Award from San Francisco Art Institute, and most recently the Honorary Doctorate of Fine Arts and the Douglas G. McAgee Distinguished Achievement Award at San Francisco Art Institute. Her artworks are represented in the collections of SF MoMA, the DeYoung Museum, the Berkeley Art Museum, the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego, the Museum of Glass and Contemporary Art in Tacoma, the Oakland Museum, and the San Jose Museum of Art. Welcome, Mildred. Would you please tell us about your series of prints, Millennials and XYZ, which is featured in the World Stage exhibition, and describe what you want to convey to the viewer and why?
Millennials and the XYZ images were done on old vintage newspapers, African American newspapers from the 1940s. I had those newspapers were given to me probably 20 or 30 years prior to me using them. And the music that was happening during the current period, the whole hip hop, the rap music that now is a part of just the American music scene. And what I wanted to show is that how they defy the norm and how they describe what is happening around them today. Black popular music has always been copied. When you travel to parts of the world, you see how what began in this country, like jazz did, this music also is now played all over the world. You hear fragments of that incorporated into other kinds of music and in different languages. I guess the invention has become sort of the lingua franca of the entire generation, and how young people dress, how they carry themselves, how they walk, is pretty much part of how we see many people in that age. And sometimes it reminds me of the 1960s, the whole Black arts movement. And what's happening today in terms of the Black Lives Matter, all of that is an extension of what came before. But acknowledging these young people, I think, is very important, and putting them in the forefront. Jay-Z, Andre 2000, all of these, who is now Andre 3000, none of those people would exist if it were not for the young people who support that music. So putting them within the context of fine art takes it all to another level and presents these in a whole different context.
Can you tell us more about your print series that Joanne touched on earlier, I've Been a Witness to This Game?
I've Been a Witness to This Game. It's a series of work that I did on women who I know. This series of work is about women who are changing how we look at them as professionals. All the women I know are movers and shakers. Tamisa Joseph, a young woman, she's a hairstylist. She had her own business. A little history, by the time she was 21, she lost her twin brother, and she went on then to become a hairstylist. Then from that, she went and got her contractor's license and is a licensed carpenter. And so I chose these women because of what they do. And they don't fit the norm. They're women of color, and they are expected, and sometimes, I mean, the whole thing is a game. It's how we look at people and determine who they are because of the color of their skin, which has nothing to do with it. It's a 19th century construct.
Thank you, Mildred, for that insight into your work. I'm sure many of our viewers and visitors are already familiar with the work of our next guest, Hung Liu. BAM presented a solo exhibition of her work entitled Strange Fruit in 2002. Her artwork is included in our permanent collection. Hung was born in Shaanxi, China in 1948, growing up under the Maoist regime. Initially trained in the socialist realist style, she studied mural painting as a graduate student at the Central Academy of Fine Art in Beijing before immigrating to the United States in 1984 to attend the University of California, San Diego. She is a two-time recipient of an NEA Fellowship in Painting. Her works have been exhibited extensively and collected by museums throughout the United States. She currently lives in Oakland, California, and is Professor Emerita at Mills College, where she has taught since 1990. Welcome, Hung. Can you speak about your path as an artist and how your message has evolved?
Well, I came to the United States in 1984. This year will be actually, by October, will be 37 years. I came to graduate school at the UC San Diego, UCSD. And coming from China is a big change, not just physically, geographically across the Pacific, but also in China. I was sent to the countryside during the Cultural Revolution, then came back to school, Beijing Teachers College, studied art and education, and taught at some schools, art to students, then went back to graduate school at the Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing, which is the #1 art institute in China. As a graduate student, studied mural. Then went to UCSD, got another graduate degree. The change now, again, it's from a socialist realism education in China, which directly came from the former Soviet Union to the United States. I consider my work it's now the socialist realism, rather social realism. My subject matter a lot to do with people who you would say anonymous and underrepresented, and a lot of in very hardship and that kind of a situation. My subject matter, and part of my work is my personal journey as an artist, but also as an immigrant.
Can you tell us about the titles of your 3 artworks in the World Stage exhibition?
The 3 prints as a series I made with Bud Shark in Colorado and Sharks Inc., titled Official Portraits. First of all, they are portraits. Secondly, they are official. It's based on, it's self-portrait in a way, but also not just about myself. I use my photograph from when I was sent to the countryside during Cultural Revolution. In China, the Cultural Revolution, the full name is the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. So I was sent to the countryside to be re-educated by the peasants to learn not just how to, work in the field, but mainly to get rid of non-proletarian ideology, what I studied from the West, from traditional Chinese culture. All this should be wiped out from my brain, my memory. Everything is about Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong's idea, Mao Zedong's thoughts. And so the very first portrait, it totals 3 portraits in this series, official portraits. The first one titled Proletarian, that means I was sent to the countryside as one of the farmers, the Chinese actually peasants work in the field, and to become a proletarian. And on the the overall, let me talk about the 3 portraits all have my face from that time, but also some traditional Chinese motifs from Chinese traditional painting, flowers, or this one is crops like corns. I work in the cornfield, wheat field, and other field, and then each one has a sticker, which is based on my photo ID. I get the photo IDs all over the world in any culture, every country. So the first one, I had an ID from one of my IDs with my photo, but with a little stamp, because official you have to be stamped everything. It's called a deep water pass, meaning in China, if you swim in the public swimming pool, in order to go to the deep swimming pool, you have to pass the test. I believe you have to swim over 200 meters to get that passed. So as I, in the countryside, in the field, I felt I was thrown in the deep water. So there's a deep water, stamp there. The second one, portrait called Immigrant, which is obvious because I immigrated from China since 1984. So one of my identities, you can say, is immigrant. And here I have the sticker is one of my photo IDs, but with a big, like a pass for deep water. I passed that, meaning I will survive in the deep water. But I feel like metaphorically, for many immigrants, we are swimming in the uncharted water. Could be deep, could be muddy, could be dangerous, and there are a lot of unforeseens, but we are in the deep water, so that's the second one. The third one called the Citizen, which based on a photograph of me years ago, maybe the same year I made the print, which is 2006. I was making a public art pieces for Oakland International Airport. I had all the pieces, glass window made in Germany, near Wiesbaden. So I traveled to other country, make a public art piece for my hometown airport. And at that time, I realized as a citizen, not just American citizen, but a rather world citizen. That's who I am. I'm getting older, but I become a world citizen of the world. Plus, this is very interesting. The other sticker on the bottom is again one of my photo IDs, but with a little stamp that if you live through famine in China in the 60s to 70s, food, everything was rationed. Only you have so much food each month, so much little meat, little other things. But anyway, that's a stamp, that image of about 2 Chinese ounces of grain. That's I think for citizens, you have to live, you have to have a food to live. Maybe symbolize in a war, we need to feed the world, feed the citizens in the world. So maybe about survival, growth, probably about that too. Yeah, so those are the 3 portraits in the official portraits series.
Then do you regard these works as self-portraits in the traditional sense?
I never thought self-portrait is about myself, actually. Self-portrait is based on my photograph of myself, but when I make into artwork, it's really bigger than myself. I think one person's story could be shared by a lot of people. More or less, we have a lot of overlapping experience. And also, I think, in many years down the road, nobody would, really check if I did accurate self-portrait of myself. Unlike the old masters, look themselves into the mirror and do a self-portrait that's like Rembrandt or Picasso, but that's not the way I did it. I feel my mural is the world. It's what I have gone through. It's time moving change. It's so my self-portrait really just one of so many people like me. It's I think bigger than me.
It seems that still today, boundaries are being imposed upon you as an artist. I know that you were planning an exhibition in China in late 2019, but Beijing officials denied the permit for the show amid political tensions. Can you talk a little about why the Chinese government did not allow the exhibition to open as planned?
I think censorship throughout my life is not something new. But in the 21st century, my work, still was censored. It's just a little surprise. But when I think about where I have gone through, where I have lived, what I've gone through, also not totally surprised. I think. I don't know exactly under which category, but in China, of course, violence and sex, all those things, if overly doing that, need my work not anything near there. But maybe I have portrayed too many, low class, poor people, and not happy like the propaganda. Everybody was even in the wheat field, even in the battleground, everybody with a big smile or heroic gestures. Maybe my work just not political enough to their standard, and I felt like on one hand it's disappointed because it's supposed to be a big show in a very very famous art, space, UCCA's Wulun's Center for Contemporary Art in Beijing. Prior to my show was the biggest Picasso show in China, but and then Matthew Barney's show. I just felt like maybe as a Chinese artist originally from there, lived in the U.S., maybe my work has some threat to the whatever, to the audience, or maybe mainly to the government. I don't know. But I think again, censorship, they have the power, they can do it, but nobody can censor me to do my work.
Thank you, Hung. It takes a great deal of courage to create artwork that pushes boundaries and transcends traditional ideas and methods. You are among so many impressive artists in this exhibition who are doing this important work. Also, thanks again to Joanne Northrup and Mildred Howard for participating in this virtual talk, exploring works on view in the World Stage exhibition at the Boise Art Museum through July 11th, 2021. We are planning 2 more virtual talks related to this important exhibition. Thank you for watching. I hope you'll visit the museum to see the works in person soon. Please help us continue to present programs like this in the future by completing a short evaluation at boiseartmuseum.org/talks. Thank you.